Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined again by Jeff Robinson and Ed Pye. Fellas, we've had the second round of the Pacific Nations Cup. We've had the second round of the Women's Rugby World Cup pool stages. You know, we're not as positive as it was for the first round, especially on the men's side. The worst bit of all is that you have to wake up at 4 a.m. Eastern just to watch this game. So we'll get into the match in Japan first. I think the whole structure of the Pacific Nations Cup is always going to be very difficult for one team at least. You know, last year it was Japan flying over just to play Canada and then flying back. The USA did fly over to Japan, but then the finals rounds were all held in Japan, so it all worked out for them. This year, it seems that Canada's got the short straw with being able to host the USA, but then immediately flying out to take on Japan. Logistically, I understand it, but obviously there's multiple time zones to get to where you need to be. There's obviously the big climate change. You're going from Calgary to uh, Japan. It has high humidity levels there at the moment. We're currently in the middle of a typhoon season in Japan. If anyone remembers the 2019 Rugby World Cup being displaced for that reason. So, yeah, Canada just unfortunate in this circumstance. And, you know, it seemed to show in the game. And I'll relate it back to the Women's World Cup in a bit, but you know, it started out fairly well. Japan, to the surprise of no one, got the first try of the game, getting the first points, up 10-0 before Canada were able to get on the scoreboard. And then just before halftime, again, Japan got another try under the post. It was only 7 points different, 17 to 10. And then Japan were just able to turn on the afterburners in the second half. I think picking up 5 or 6 tries in quick succession. And then Canada were able to get another score from Jesse McHale to make it 15 points. But then just to add salt to the wound, Japan wanted to get another try right at the death to really cement their devastating victory over Canada. The full time score, Japan 57, Canada 15. Tries for Parry and first try for Jesse McHale. Nelson picking up only one of the conversions, but picking up a penalty instead. And, you know, we talked before in last week's episode of all that Canada needed to do was to get one bonus point and they would secure not only their place in the PNC finals, but in the next Men's Rugby World Cup. And that did not happen. So it is now down to Japan, USA. It's not finality, but obviously, if the USA gets a bonus point win and makes up the point difference that Canada has, then they will advance to the finals round, and Canada will go to the fifth, sixth playoff. So it's really in Canada's best interest if Japan win the game against the USA, which is looking likely if we're taking rankings. That said, USA rankings wise, we're looking to beat Canada, so who knows at this point. Ed, I'll start with you. What did you make of this match down in Japan?
Yeah, I don't know that we want to look too closely at rankings at the moment. You know, New
Mm,
Zealand's ranked number one at the moment, but I don't know that anybody would say that they're actually the best team in the
mm,
world right now. So rankings is one thing. I think Japan has a quality of depth in some players that you know, they used to use the tier one. It's all changed the way that they categorize countries now. But Japan is one of these teams. There's been talk about them playing in the Rugby Championship. You know, they've had World Cups 2019 where they went through to the finals. So they're a really good team. You know, they've got some excellent players. Warner Dearns was great. Dylan Riley's another great player. And then underneath, you know, those sort of more international players that they have, there's a whole slew of Japanese players that are coming through that are actually dominating at in the top league there and playing really well. So Japan's a country that's only just going to continue to get better. So I don't know that we can deride the Canadian performance too much. I was really cheering on for that fourth try there. Like, let's get that last try there, but unfortunately, Canada couldn't get it done. I think sometimes it's difficult to come off a high of winning your previous game where it's a really big game. You've got lots of energy, and the guys would have gone out and celebrated that, and then to come back for another big match where you've got to try and get to that level again, it can be quite difficult. So I think Canada probably just maybe had a bit of difficulty getting up to that level again. But it is a good lesson for them to learn that if you want to consistently improve and consistently rise up those rankings, you have to bring that intensity to every match.
Mm, that's true. And yeah, as you say, Japan have been in a solid position probably for the last decade or so of building their team. They previously had the Sunwolves, but Japanese top one league is doing phenomenally well. And yeah, the rumor going around is that Fiji and Japan will be joining the Rugby Championship with this whole new like Nations Championship coming about. It just fits everything a lot easier if they're included in the Rugby Championship as well. That is a something that will probably be announced probably at the start of next year, but you heard it here first. Um, Jeff, what did you make of this matchup? Are there any positives from this otherwise pretty much one-sided game?
Well, actually, I actually got up and watched it live. Not sure if that was a positive or not, but I did. Speaking of what Ed said too, it's not just coming, getting back up from that high as the week before, but you also had to travel like 12 hours to get there too. So, I mean, there's definitely, uh, was it the deck was stacked against them in that game for sure.
Mm,
For positives, I actually thought the lineout, especially in the first half, still went well. Most positive Canadian play came off of their lineout. So, to see that their lineup was functioning without Ardron, without Olmsted, and against what you could definitely categorize as tier one country, that was definitely a positive. I thought Nelson and O'Leary's tactical kicking like from ball in hand was actually pretty good, and it kept them going too. I think they missed out on a 50-22 that even the announcers were a bit puzzled that the officials didn't give it to them. I believe that
mm,
was mid first half of the game. Lessons to be learned though too was I saw the halftime stats and Canada had one line break. It was Nelson, they said. I honestly cannot recall it. So definitely, I mean, Owu was trying to get that front foot ball, but definitely at the breakdown, at the ruck, the recycling of the ball, it was not a very pretty sight for them. But the lineouts and I think the kicking from ball in hand was definitely positives from the game too.
mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the general consensus going into this match was it wasn't so much of could Canada win. I think, with the tier one structure that's behind Japan, this was a game that many predicted was going to be a loss, but it was like how well can they handle themselves in this kind of situation? And yeah, it does seem that this is just a difficult matchup to have. Obviously I just mentioned about Japan and Fiji joining the rugby championship. So whilst logistically this may not happen in the future because obviously Japan and Fiji may not be taking part, but if they do, maybe the future consideration would be um, Canada goes to Japan first and then flies back home. So they're in like home comforts and ready to get going for that game. And then Japan fly over to play the USA. And then we have the finals, which will be held in the USA this year. Obviously, this is just circumspect and out of our control because if the PNC does continue and Japan and Fiji are going to the rugby championship, then obviously this is all moot. But yeah, I think that Yeah, definitely. Whoever has to fly out to Japan is definitely given the short stick on this, or even Japan flying out to North America just to play one game and then flying back home, which was the circumstance last year. Um, Ultimately, it's disappointing in the sense that Canada wasn't able to compete to secure that bonus point to ensure their qualification for the Men's Rugby World Cup, and I think it's just more a case of it's out of their control. It's now up to how well the game goes between the USA and Japan. So, yeah, it's a shame, but unfortunately, that is the way that the dice have been rolled. That's the card that's been dealt. So I guess we'll all be Brave Blossoms fans this coming weekend as they take on the USA. And hopefully that Canada will be proceeding into the semi-finals of the Pacific Nations Cup. But enough about that. Let's talk about something more positive, something that was shown at a more reasonable hour of the day, which is still 7 a.m. Eastern time. And that is Canada's game versus Wales in the pool stages of the Women's Rugby World Cup. Wales, I think everyone's aware of Wales's standings in both men's and women's international rugby has not been the best in the most recently. Um, but this was still going to be a game that they knew from a Welsh perspective that they needed to pull out all the stops. You know, you're going up against the second ranked team in the world, and how are you going to handle that pressure? And with all fairness and respect to the Welsh, they actually did hold it back for a good uh, portion of the opening game. When you consider that by I think it's like the 10th minute, Canada were 40-0 up on Fiji. And at this point, like Wales had still held them to nil. And, McKinley Hunt eventually powers over for the first try of the game. Um, and then we just had like, it was just going well in terms of both like a Welsh and Canadian perspective, I would say, of that Wales were able to, keep their own, and Canada was still able to get on the scoreboard. And then there was just 5 minutes of absolute Canadian dominance, highlighted exemplary by Asia Hogan-Rochester in her first Women's Rugby World Cup game that she was able to break off the tackler, run in 60 meters, using that sevens experience to get her down the field and get, I believe that was the third try for Canada. And yeah, it seemed as though if there had been any wind in the sails of the Welsh side, it had all gone by that time. Securing the bonus point before half time. And in the second half, there were, still two tries to be scored. Taylor Perry getting her first World Cup try on the board. And then it all seemed to like simmer down a bit. Wales definitely tried to get the ball over. They had their driving more from the line out, but Canada were able to get their hands underneath it and hold the ball up. And the final score being a devastating 42 to Canada, Wales nil. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Sophie De Goody, player of the match, also nailed every single one of her conversions. And with currently on 10 points, Canada are now secured to advance to the quarterfinals. They will play Scotland this coming Saturday, again, 7 a.m. Eastern time, to determine who will finish top of that pool. Jeff, I'll go over to you first. Um, Another dominant performance by the Canadian women. Anything that stands out for you?
Well, congrats first for them making it through to the next round. Sophie the Goody, 6 for 6 on the kicking, and not all of them were easy. That was very good to see, I think, for Canada moving into the next stage of the World Cup. Definitely, that she seems to have the radar on. So hopefully that continues because kicking will definitely be a bigger factor, the penalties and conversions as this tournament goes on. Other things, first, a general overall comment. I was really surprised by how nasty the game came across at times. It was
Hmm.
definitely like I was a bit surprised. There was some definitely chirping and some definitely comments, and I think Perry was involved a couple times, a couple incidences. Just the overall atmosphere, like you said, like Wales brought it. I think they held Canada nil for about 15 minutes. Definitely tried to match Canada's physicality, and I think maybe Canada was responding to that by saying, "Hey, we're the big girls on the block here." And but I was just overall surprised by how some of the chirpiness and uh, some of the overall play of the game was too.
Yeah, I think that there was a few moments of tension that were coming out. I think there was so Gabrielle Senft, she scored
Mhm.
a try, or what looked to be a try, before it was called back. But even beforehand, she was pushing the Welsh player's head into the ground. And I was surprised that wasn't called back by the TMO or anything. But
Oh yeah, I
apparently,
was when I saw that try was going to be disallowed. The team, I thought for sure that was going to be it because there's also looked like maybe a bit of a stuff at the ruck right before too.
mm,
As well. And I am pretty sure I saw Perry do what we usually don't consider a very good gesture
mm,
uh, after Kenna got scored the next try to the
yeah.
Welsh too. But I don't know. I mean, definitely that means that they're also involved mentally in this game and they're focused too. Mhm.
Yeah, I think as well. And someone asked how come the try was called back when Sophie de Goody had already kicked the conversion, and it was actually a law change a few years ago that it can be called back after the conversion. It's only after the ball has been um, kicked off again. That's when you can't call back the try. But the referees were on it, and yeah, they irritatingly they called it back for a Senf knock on, and then show the one angle where it doesn't clearly show Senf knocking it on. However, Wales had delivered a high tackle and it met the threshold of danger, so it was a yellow card. Then Tessier has the penalty and then kicks it dead. And that was just a head in the hands moment for me of like, oh, you lost the try. You very nearly lost a play. I still, again, don't know why Senf wasn't given marching orders for pushing a player in the head. Um, but now you have the opportunity to go for the try again. We know your driving maul's been good, and yet the kick veers into the dead zone. So. However, after a lot of play, Perry was able to get the try over. De Goody was able to get the conversion again, and it all went pretty well. Um, and then Olivia de Merchant getting herself a yellow card for a high hit. However, it was passive, so it remained as just a yellow, but still 10 minutes off. That's when the driving maul from Wales happened. Yeah, a bit scrappy, I think is the best way to define the ending of that half. Yeah, a number of errors that clearly the higher ranked teams, such as England, New Zealand, France, they would be able to capitalize on them far better than Wales could. Um, but yeah, job done in that regard. Ed, anything that stood out for you from this game?
Yeah, my main takeaway that I wrote down was that Canada utilized, they didn't utilize space well, but they utilized not space well, if that makes sense. So when they were going out to their backs, a lot of their attacking phases, the structure that they'd set up in the backs, there was a lot of like passes that went around the back that didn't go to anybody. There was a lot of sloppy passes, scrappy passes in space. They weren't very good in space at all. When they were trying to look to go wide, it got really sloppy and they made mistakes. That was probably because Wales were defending well. They were coming up quickly. The Wales loose forwards were really pushing up hard. So that probably disrupted a lot of the Canada back play. But I've heard the way that Canada like took control, the Canada forwards took control of the game, described before as grumble Grinch rugby. It's basically like the backs are playing terribly. We're a seasoned pack of forwards. We're just going to take control of this game. So they were really, really good in short spaces down the blind side, just doing one-off runners, offloads, getting in behind it. You know, when you look at the carries, De Goody was top with 20, but then Hunt and Menon were the second and third. So like those experienced forward players really stood up and said, things aren't working as well in the backs. So we're going to take control of this game and we're going to, create that buffer so that later on players like Hogan-Rochester can, create some magic. And that's eventually what happened. So, in terms of a game, definitely scrappy and definitely the frustration was there. Although I've never seen anybody I've never penalized anybody for just a little bit of a bit of a rub of the head on the ground there. So I don't know if other
I
people
think we
agree.
have different definitions of rub on the head.
Yeah, it's a bit of a
I don't know about you. I don't rub
It wasn't
with
really a rub.
gravity. So,
It wasn't really a rub. It was more like a couple push downs or maybe they like move over type stuff.
yeah. I
yeah.
initially thought that she was holding on to the ball, and that was the reason for the frustration. But then you see the slow-mo replay, and she was nowhere near the ball. So it was definitely off the ball play. So you guys are
Mm.
probably right. It probably could have been penalized. Um, But that frustration, I think, was born from a pretty strong Welsh defense that started really well, and then this sort of scrappy play in the back line. But the key takeaway there is that the Canadian forwards rolled their sleeves up and said, "We are going to take control of this match." De Goody, incredible. Crossley, really great. Hunt and Menon were excellent. So that's the real big takeaway is that if Canada's not playing well, they can win ugly. And that's something
Mm.
that all champion teams have is the ability to change their gameplay. If things are not, going too smoothly in certain areas, they can go back to a powerful forward pack, an experienced forward pack, a kind of a grumpy forward pack, and that forward pack is going to go in and make the gains that the team needs to actually get into the lead. So I think that was my key takeaway there. Again, is that the forward pack is just fantastic. The backs need a little bit more cohesiveness.
Mm.
I think they've got the players in there like Flo Simons is she's a prototypical center. She breaks and then looks for supporting players. So that's she's gonna get better and better as the tournament goes on. But yeah, just the fact that the forwards are in there and the forwards had a dominant performance, I think is a great takeaway for Canada.
And something else that came out this week regarding the Canadian women was a fantastic video by rugby enthusiast extraordinaire Squidge Rugby, saying how the Canadian women's team are the most innovative team in rugby at the moment, giving high praise to Kevin Rouet as well as Sophie de Goody's versatility as well. Originally going a back rower that kicks to a lock that kicks, simply having to reposition herself in the scrum and in the structure just because Canada's back rows are so deep in terms of talent and experience. And yeah, part of me when watching it was like, oh, great. Now all the other coaches are gonna watch this and find all the holes in the strategy. And I'm like, can you just leave the strategy videos until after the tournament's over? So new strategy has time to be put in place. But
Oh, sorry, Stu. One thing just the other thing I was sort of looking at that Canada can improve on
hmm,
is that they had the better of the scrums through the whole match. They were pushing Wales off the ball in pretty much every scrum. But one thing they didn't do is, well, when they were getting that scrum dominance, they were releasing the ball really quickly to the back line. So they're
hmm,
not actually playing for the scrum penalty. If they just wait 5, 6 seconds longer till the ref actually sees that picture of scrum dominance,
hmm.
they're going to get a free play on that play. They'll draw the penalty, and then they'll be able to, do whatever they want. That's where that creativity comes in because, yeah, they're getting the dominance in the scrum through their forward pack, and they just need to capitalize on it a little bit more.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think that one of the strategies from this game was to exploit the gaps in Wales's defense, and obviously, if you can get the ball out as soon as possible, you can do that. Obviously, we know how strong the forwards are for Canada, how the driving maul has been an excellent weapon in their arsenal over the years, and but yeah, I do agree with you in the sense of, you can exploit the scrum to your advantage, get a penalty, after enough times. Does the card come out and then you're already up player in the then you have to take one of the backs out to replace the front row, and there is that whole line of strategy coming, and I'm sure that Kevin Rouge is going over all the possibilities, especially for the upcoming game against Scotland. Um, yeah, absolutely. I think that that's something that can be used, but in the same way, like any good skills you have, you don't want to put all your aces and all your top strategies out on full display. You got to leave something for the final rounds. So, and speaking of which, obviously we've been mentioning that Canada has automatically qualified for the next round. But interestingly, who their opponent is still up in the air. It looked as though it was going to be Australia going into this game against the USA. However, that game ended up being tied, in fact, with a bonus point for uh, the USA their and for Australia as well. Now, Australia are up against England next, and I think we all know which direction that game's going to go in. So it's going to be the opportunity is that can Australia get a bonus point against the world number ones and the hosts of the tournament to preserve their opportunity to get to the quarterfinals, or will the USA up against Samoa be able to not only get that bonus point, but turn the points deficit around to really help them out? So here's a question to both of you. Who would you prefer Canada face in the quarterfinals? This is also assuming that Canada beats Scotland. I don't want to put the cart before the horse just yet, but between the United States and Australia, this would be another matchup of the Pacific Four series. Who would you prefer to have? I'll go with you first, Ed.
I think, as a New Zealander, Australia having a period where they were dominant over New Zealand for a while, I think I'd say I would rather have the US. I think Australia's got a higher ceiling than the US. I think the US, when they played Canada, they looked a little bit one-dimensional. And they ran out of ideas at a certain point. Australia will have, they've got a number of players that can, change things up. So I think I'd rather play the US. But I did see an interesting comment from Tony Ridnell on Facebook today, asking people in the US whether the US should play their full team and try and smash Samoa and get that big points difference, or they should give some of their wider squad a run to actually give everybody some game time in the World Cup, which I thought was interesting because I would have thought you go in there with the best chance to try and get through to the finals. But obviously not everybody in the US, and Tony's been a stalwart in the US for a long time. Not everybody's thinking the same way as I am.
Mhm. Jeff, are you on the same page? Should Canada face the USA, or do you think Australia, right for the picking?
Uh, guess I would say generally I am. I think Australia maybe has a bit more of a dynamic back line, and I think they have a younger forward group, but I don't think they're quite there yet. Maybe in a couple of years, Australia will be a bit more dangerous. Whereas, yeah, I think what you say, Ed, is that USA is a one-trick pony. I kind of think at this
I don't know if
time,
I put it that harshly, but yeah.
yeah, at this time, I kind of think the this is it for this American group. I don't think they have another gear in them. and I
Hmm.
think Canada can handle them. I think so. I think generally speaking, I guess I would say yeah. I guess USA too. Although I'd rather pick Samoa.
Yeah. I so I just for the sake of difference, I'm going to say Australia just on the grounds that the Canadian women have never lost to the Wallaroos
Mm.
in their history of playing. So, that statistic is going with you, but I mean, it's the old enemy. It's your neighbors on the border. We've beaten them twice this year. Let's go for the hat trick and make it three. But again, and in that regard, to your question, Ed, of should the USA rest some players against Samoa, I think that there's still a job to be done, and you want to make sure it's done conclusively. I think that what you should be doing from the US perspective is get your best players in the starting line and then have some of the less experienced players on the bench. And your goal is simple, get the bonus point by half time, rack up as many points as you can. And then in the second half, we'll probably from like the 45th or 50th minute, that's when we'll do like a bomb squad substitution of we'll just clear out the bench, we'll just get everyone on. And, their objective is exactly the same. Get as many tries as you can, keep racking up those points, do what you can to get us over. Because I mean, yeah, I agree that, if you make it to the quarterfinals, you want to have like your best players available. You don't want them injured frivolously. But again, that you're not confirmed to be making that quarterfinal just yet.
Yeah, and actually both games are on the same day, and USA plays first,
Hmm.
which in some ways is advantage Australia because they'll know exactly what they need to do. Like if USA stutters against Samoa, even if they win, just as a
Hmm.
small victory, I mean, it can be a double-edged sword too. But I guess mentally that can focus Australia to what they need to do against England because I believe USA has quite a points differential to make up too, I think.
Yeah, 80 points, I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that opening game against England did
yeah,
a lot of damage,
yeah,
but you can also say, that England they've qualified now. They're pretty much guaranteed to, they're guaranteed to beat Australia, but does England want to put all their starters in or their first 15 or even the first 23? And they'll do the exact same thing, all right, ladies, go out there, get the bonus point, and we'll just cruise the rest. And if Australia pick up a few tries, that's good for them. But we'll still win this game as best we can. And their focus will be on, I believe they're currently in line to play. I want to say France, but I'm pretty sure that is incorrect at this moment. So let me just do a quick gander at who it's going to be in the yeah, because England are Pool A, and they will be facing the runner-up of Pool B, which I believe
I
is
think it's gonna be C, I think. No, no, Pool D, I think. It'll either be France or South Africa, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, because I think
uh
right now Canada is
yeah.
in
So
line.
South Africa, I think no, it's New Zealand and South Africa are currently looking to face each other in the quarterfinals. I believe I'm probably incredibly wrong on that. Because if I remember correctly, Canada is Pool B, New Zealand is Pool C, South Africa and South Africa is currently ahead of France, due to France not getting that bonus point. So England will be top of Pool A. They'll be facing B2. They'll be facing Scotland most likely, which therefore would be a repeat of the Six Nations for England. Australia or the USA would likely be facing Canada, which means that New Zealand are currently, at this moment, would be placing France, and Ireland would be facing South Africa. Obviously, We've still got a bit of a ways to go. New Zealand lost to Ireland last year. Maybe that'll be a repeat performance this year. We could have Ireland, France, South Africa, New Zealand. I think I think this weekend's going to be a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend everyone to watch it. Starting off, of course, with Canada versus Scotland. That is Saturday, September 6th, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, and that game is available on TSN. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces on our website, rougerugby.ca. We also have podcasts on Spotify and YouTube, and available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky, all at the Rouge Rugby. Jeff, Ed, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on X at WP Rugby Jeff.
Yeah, and you can find me rugby 101 underscore 2025 on Facebook and Instagram.
Well, Jeff, Ed, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. We hope you can join us again next time.